So, welcome to our conversation today on PR in the era of social media. I'm your host, Tarunjeet Ratan, and I will be moderating the session for you. Bijoya has already introduced all our panels, so let's get right to it. PR in the era of social media is always a good topic to debate, isn't it? But today, along with this conversation, we'll also delve into the new ground rules that we should be looking at in this new playing field. And to discuss this, we have with us a very esteemed panel of 6 accomplished professionals for this National PR Day special. So the Super 6 today on our panel will help us decode this subject. And as we chat, if you have questions, you can add them on the chat section. So let's get right down to it. First things first, where does social media fit in? Does it belong to the advertising family or comes under the PR umbrella? How does marketing look at it, and how do they manage this for their brands internally when they engage with their agency? Bhaskar and Subi, I would like to start with you.
Bhaskar, you want to go first?
Bhaskar, you're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're muted.
Yeah. Thanks, Vijaya, for inviting us, and happy to be part of such a panel. Thanks, Tarun. And in ideal situation, I think social media should come under PR only, because setting up the strategic narrative or storytelling comes very naturally to the PR professionals. But especially with COVID and the kind of social media post or the engagement or the campaigns we're seeing now, it's more and more, it's becoming more creative, and usage of short videos is more. Hence, I think, advertising also plays some, part of it, but it has to be a combination of both. Again, it depends, it depends on brand to brand, product, services. A B2B company may have a completely different, requirement compared to a B2C company. Like Sujit will be able to add further. A company like mine, a B2B company, the requirement may be very less. But especially for a B2C company or a FMCG company, the requirement may be completely different. And of late, I've seen that, especially with our social media handles, normal posts are okay, but whenever anyone is posting any kind of special creative or short videos, I think the amplification, the engagement is more. So I think, PR plays a bigger role, but advertising also has a stake in it.
Correct. Subi, what's your take on this?
Thanks so much, Tarun. I first want to start by wishing everybody a very happy National PR Day. I think this is a very, very significant day. And I also want to wish Bijoy a very happy anniversary. I think what she's done is she's, through AdGully, brought a lot of friends and a lot of fellow travelers together in the room. I think this is a very important question to start with, because what we're looking at is a post-COVID world. And we need to first decode what you want to achieve through various handles, whether it's social media, whether it is through PR. A lot of people, depending upon what your brand story is and what your key communication objective is, have also consciously decided to shy away from social. It's no longer a choice, but you have to decide where is it that you'd like to take your discourse. Are you looking at a policy comms objective? Are you looking at placing this for product? Are you looking at selling more soft drinks? So that's very, very critical. You first start with understanding why PR, and then therefore what is the role that social will play in it. I do want to take you back to some stats. So consumers on an average are spending about 2.5 hours online. This number's only increased post Geo and the gift of free data that we got. A lot of behavior change has happened, Tarunjeet. So it's very, very critical that we understand that what is the target audience, where would I find them, what is the role that social can play, and second, how is it that I want my brand to be perceived. So a lot of conversations, brands looking to start conversations, for them social is very, very integral to what you want to do by way of even an everyday messaging standpoint. And while I agree with Bhaskar, I think it's very important that we place, whether it's corporate affairs, whether it's policy, whether it's PR, no matter what you call it, what you're doing is reputation management. And now there's a reason why PR professionals or policy professionals or comms professionals, so to speak, have a seat at the table right at the leadership. So what you're really solving for, A, is regulatory and policy issues, you're also solving for keeping the business afloat. It's very important that, whether even if it's the government that you're looking at, the communication needs to be consistent, the communication needs to be constant. And
Right.
therefore, I believe that, taking this in the narrow lens of whether it should be Marcom or advertising, a lot of how US tech companies have also started looking at a very function of PR that has changed. So I believe looking at where you want to take this narrative to, whether it's strategic communications, whether it's basic storytelling, you want to achieve marketing objectives of the brand, or you simply want to, let's say, build awareness. If you're a startup, you'd have very different communication objective. If it's an image relationship issue, it's a reputation issue, and equally important is the PR landscape itself is changing. So if you're the UN or if you're change.org, you'd have very different utilization for social media. We're also looking at a transient community of young audiences who expect more from their brands. I think the previous panel spoke a lot to building a brand with purpose. So I want to be with Gap if they're producing clothes and they're socially responsible. As a young consumer, I also want to join my voice with a brand. And if social allows me to be part of that cause, whether it's standing on the street and saying, I want an India free of corruption, or saying that I want my brand to be more inclusive, the celebrities that we use, that's really what we're trying to drive. So I believe no matter, who you work with, and there are no silos, again, Tarunji, it's very important to realize that PR and advertising are working together. More increasingly, any story that comes out, even in our own organization, when you look at a script, it's always, does it have a comms lens to it? So I'll stop here, but this is where I stand on this. Thank you.
Let me tweak
I
the
think
question.
Tarun, if I need to butt in on this, I think.
Sujit, I'm coming to you, right? Sujit, I'm coming to you since Bhaskar has specifically mentioned that this question should be directed at you. If, as from a Marcom angle, if you were to look today at hiring somebody to work with you on, managing your online reputation, would you prefer having a PR agency that also have expertise in social media, or would you look at two different, agencies to work with you? Sujit.
I don't know why we still have this confusion of where it rests and what kind of people and stuff. I think it has to be seen from a communication lens rather than an advertising or a marketing or a Marcom or a PR kind of a lens. If you're really obsessive about your consumers, your objective is to reach to the consumers what you want to communicate around your brands. It could be a combination. So my vote goes for a collaborative working along with everyone, because everyone has a role to play in creating a narrative. If an Amit wants to create an ad for Lay's, he has to have the reputation angle, he has to have the creative angle, he has to have all of them, and then he communicates. Or if I have to do a communication for a brand in FMCG space or in a B2B space, I think the constituents needs to come together. Otherwise, we'll end up having multiple social media functions because everyone wants to own it. So from a larger angle, from a thought leadership angle, and from a very perfection oriented outcome out of social media, I think it's a collaborative effort that really works. To answer your question in terms of what are the kind of competencies that I would look for in terms of you said reputation management, online reputation management, right? So I think like people have nose for news, I would love to have people who have ears for listening. So I think online reputation management is all about listening for me. Like at Godrej, if you have 750 million consumers buying our product every year, I need to know what they're talking about us. And if I don't listen well, I can't create any campaigns or any communication or any responses. But the person whom I would vote to be part of my team on an ORM would be someone who can listen well, irrespective it comes from PR agency or ad agency or wherever. I mean, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to implementation, all of them come together. We sit in the same room, we discuss everything together, and a common outcome comes up, owned by everyone. Seems like a very utopian situation, but that's the way forward. I mean, that's the only way you're going to save resources, conserve resources, do a good job, have an outcome which is much more, has a great return on objectives. So I think that's the way to go forward.
Yeah, that's a very utopian view for it. And if things would have it, I mean, that would be the ideal selection. But I'd love to hear from Kiran on this. Kiran, you are heading an agency. What?
Yes.
And I'm coming to you.
Yeah. Hi, Tarun, and thank you. Great to be here. So, okay, two questions. So I'll answer the first one, which is where does social sit? As per me, I think it sits under both. The way, of course, objectives define how you translate that for your function. But what I notice is that, when it comes to perception building, it sits under PR. When it comes to more sales and product communication, it sits under digital marketing. Under PR, the kind of mandates we manage, we do not have, it's purely organic. When it sits under PR, typically there are not monies available to spend on campaigns. So what that means is the quality of your content and the quality of your storytelling becomes very important to drive engagement. So ideally, what I would really like is I would like better collaboration between the functions. I think it is still some way away, while it happens in pockets, of course, but I think there's a lot more collaboration that needs to happen between the functions. The kind of person, one more thing about, social sitting under PR is when it comes to a crisis. Initially, I guess when, with PR worked by sending out messages, which was one way. Social has made it a communication. You had 24-hour news cycles. Now it's reduced to a 15-second nanocycle. So when a crisis hits, I think, PR's role in a crisis becomes very, very important. So, there are certain silos where PR trumps digital marketing, while in other cases it might be different. The kind of person that I think would be ideal, I think would be a mix of somebody who's spent enough time in digital marketing and somebody who's a good storyteller. I think with digital marketing, I think what somebody who's trained in that comes with a great sense of, has a great understanding of the platforms. And I think speed and agility are something that get internalized. As PR people, of course, how does every word impact what you're saying, and being able to craft it well is a skill that we, I think, have. So ideally a person that brings the two, because speed, agility, understanding comes from their kind of storytelling and the impact it can have on your stakeholders, is something that I think PR folk have to do. So ideally a combination of the two, we are still looking.
Interesting. So there's a very interesting point that you made, when it comes to a PR agency handling digital and PR, the budgets are very restricted. But that's not the case when it comes to social. We have a lot of public communication professionals here with us. Maybe we would like one of them to respond to that.
Yes. Somebody's in the hot seat.
I just wanted to come in on both the points very briefly. I think it's very critical that when we're looking at hiring and skill sets, this is something that we're doing on an everyday basis. And now you don't even get to meet the candidates. So it's about how, as a storyteller, you're representing your own selves. A lot of times we end up looking at their social media profiles. We end up looking at who you are, what you're saying. We had a very basic rule. It's called the t-shirt rule. What you'll not wear on your t-shirt, don't put that on your social media handles. It's very critical that it's not just about, hey, I was having fun and in the moment I wrote something. This is your digital identity, and if you don't represent yourself well, there is no way that I will trust you to represent my corporate reputation. So it is also about reading. It is about being newsy. It is about being topical. If you understand what's going on, if it's a COVID situation, and this is, Chomsky's written on it, there are reams which have been written on visual communication, on juxtaposition. You don't put out an ad next to a story about famine of a new restaurant, upscale restaurant that just opened up. It's just plain insensitive. Second, also about tropicality and moment marketing. So unless you're aware of what's going on around you, unless you're watching good cinema, unless you're reading good books, unless you're even looking at news stories, it's very difficult to say, I understand the grammar and I understand the syntax and therefore I'll be good at my job. Then you're no different from the next person and you might end up doing more damage to me. Second, it's a very important question that Kiran raised, and this is about budget. So it's many times the onus is on us as professionals. It's very easy to say, oh, marketing and sales have a lot of budgets because it's intensive, it's ATL, it's BTL, and we need to do a television campaign. PR, you got an agency, now make do with it, right? So this is where sensitization, this is where, we told some of our young interns to make videos for getting budget approvals. It was a 30-second video that was sent out to say, here's why we need the money, this is what we'll do. You may not have the time to read a 3-page proposal on ROI, what, how, when. Can you watch a 30-second video? And this is what we will do. I'm the youngest member in the team. Can you please approve budgets? So we're looking at creative solutions, and we're also telling people that if you're not, amplifying content, a lot of your messaging will get lost. So that rationalization of why PR also needs social media support, it requires budget. It's that door that you keep banging on and you keep knocking and you say it many, many times in a meeting, and then finally the penny drops.
Absolutely.
So I quickly wanted to add a point of view here. Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much, and I hope everyone is keeping healthy and safe. We're all going through tough times. So Sujit did talk about Lay's as a brand, and I want to give a approach of what we do at PepsiCo, a live example. So I think he touched the.
Your
Are you
voice
able to
is
hear me?
echoing. Yeah, your voice is echoing a bit.
Hold on. Is it okay now? Can you hear me? Okay. So I think very important point Sujit mentioned was about.
Amit, take out your headphones and speak into the computer. It'll be much more clearer.
Just give me a minute then, because there's some issue with not using the headphone. Just give me a second then.
Have we lost him? Amit, we're not able to hear you. Okay, guys, fair warning, there is thunder and lightning happening outside in Bangalore right now. So there might be a lot of disturbance coming in from my end. So I'll keep myself on mute so that there is more clarity in the conversation for all the panelists. Amit, are you there? Okay, I think we've lost him.
Why don't you ask someone else the question by the time Amit kind of comes back?
I can come in with a little bit of a dimension to the points that some of the co-panelists made, Tarunjit, while Amit joins in. So I think on your first question, and that's something that is, where does comms and PR sit? And very aptly mentioned by the panelists. But I wanted to add that, while putting them in a bucket might be a very narrow point of view, and communication and PR is really a corporate function, having a 360-degree view of what's happening across maybe marketing, across customer care, across your manufacturing, across so many functions. It's important that wherever the responsibility of social media lies, for example, your care team will have a social media handle, you will have executive social presence, you will have a B2C brand presence, you will have a corporate presence, and there will be multiple people and functions and teams managing each of these. It's important for the comms team to be integrated and have either an accountability or, if you look at the classic RACI, responsible, accountable, in the know of and informed. If you look at that model, then at least you either the comms team needs to be accountable or needs to be at least in the know of what is happening. For example, an influencer strategy, you might get in an influencer with millions of followers, but what is the brand voice? How does the influencer impact your long-term narrative? Those are certain things that comms function can bring in a perspective on. Similarly, your customer care. Crises come in on customer care so often, and comms is a very, very critical and crucial aspect of being part of the care strategy and how do we respond to our customers. And more importantly, while I talked about where are we accountable, where are we at least putting in some bit of input, there will also be areas like internal comms, or converting your employees. If you're a mid-size or large-size company, you're converting your employees into brand ambassadors and getting them to post on their social and harnessing their network for your brand. That's where I think internal comms takes an even bigger responsibility, especially for a mid-sized organization or a large organization where you have a substantial employee base. Similarly, somebody spoke about policy communication and how communication then takes a long-term view of how we can build a narrative on social. So depending on where you are, what is the role that the comms team can play? You have to be either accountable for sure, or you have to be consulted. And there will also be places where you'll be, and for example, in Adobe, me and my team were managing social directly. Here at HMD, I'm not directly responsible for social, but we definitely, participate in what is the content that's going out. Care, it's a very crucial aspect of what is happening on customer care and how we're responding to online, customer queries. So I wanted to bring in, my 2 cents there.
Absolutely. I think a personal branding is a huge, factor in the way a company is also perceived. Huge supporter of everybody looking at personal branding on an individual level, maybe starting from day one, as well as using the internal workforce for doing that. Very often we forget that our own employees, a company's employees are their biggest brand ambassadors. Amit, we would want you to weigh on this as well.
So I was not able to hear what you guys were talking, but I can just complete what I was telling on the first question, if that's okay. So I just wanted to complete that. Sujit talked about collaboration, and I just wanted to say that how the PR team played a very key role in collaborating with the marketing team, and over the last 2 years, how they made a change of difference in the way projects and campaigns are being done. So from being just a mere spectator, say 2 years back now, the team works very closely with the brand team. Like we said, social is very, very important for the brands, but it's also very critical what the objective of social is. One of the panelists also mentioned the clear objectives. So from reputation management to crisis communication to also brand building and consumer engagement is something what brands are looking at. So what we do at PepsiCo India is that while from a corporate lens, we look at the PR team managing the reputation of the brand, including the product brands. From the social side, it was earlier the advertising firms which were managing the social media. But with the experience and with the kind of value addition we brought in, slowly the comms team also started looking at campaigns from a 360 lens, from looking at crisis which could happen from a Lay's campaign to doing value addition with influencer marketing, which is a very important area, and I'm sure we'll discuss further. And I think because of that points, we were able to bring in the value. And now for all the campaigns, there's a 360-degree leg to social media. And the comms team plays a very key role in managing the entire communication around that. Whereas there is an advertising leg too also, because social is also paid media, which is managed by the advertising agencies. But the comms team plays a very key role in managing the entire influencer marketing and crisis communication. Because we are living in a time where brands need to be very, very careful on what they're putting out. A very simple ad of talking about travel across the world could be very insensitive, where the world is waking up to a lockdown news. So we, from a corporate lens, look at it very, very closely and play a very key role. And that's because we collaborate very, very closely. I think so that's really important going forward with the changing dynamicness of social media, and going to be more important going forward the new normal.
But I want you to answer a specific question. While Subi and Minita have given us their views on it, when it comes to budget allocation, right, where it looks at, when you look at a PR agency handling social along with it, or if there are two separate budgets when it comes to handling PR, hiring a PR agency versus a digital agency, the budget is for a combined entity always becomes much lesser when as compared to hiring two separate entities between, splitting it between PR and digital. I want to understand what's the logic, what is the reasoning behind it?
See, at PepsiCo, we have things are very clear. We have two different PR consultants. One is for the corporate brand and other is for the product brands. The budgeting for that is taken care by the marketing team. Right. So, and hence it becomes even more important that we work shoulder to shoulder with them. It's a very close, open collaboration with them. As far as the social media budgets is concerned, thankfully, it's again parked in the marketing team. So they take care of all that. But we are seen as experts internally, and we also seen as consultants helping them coming out with all the content. In fact, every piece of content which goes out from PepsiCo brands and corporate is being approved by us. So we don't have to worry about the budgets, to be very honest. But the fact is that we do help them consolidate costs. We do help them with ensuring that whatever campaigns they do is through us. But entire budgeting is done by marketing. But having said that, we are going through tough times. So there is a consolidation happening where they're looking at the agencies managing social media in the present mandate. So they're not looking at spending extra buck. And they're also looking at in-house internal resource who could look at social media and manage it. Because I think brand managers are also very good storytellers. We have a lot of interns who work with us who are given projects on social media. So trying to use those resources and cut down costs. But from a comms lens, we don't have to worry on budget, thankfully.
That's a say, but doesn't answer my question, right? So I don't think I'm going to get that answer today. So I'm going to move on. Very often we look at a lot of social media crisis. Whenever it happens, it very quickly becomes the PR team's problem, right? By now, I would have assumed there should be a lot of protocols that are already set for teams to work cohesively. But that doesn't seem to still, become, it's not a norm. It's more of an aberration that's happening out there. I want Amit and Kiran, both of you, to weigh in on this. How do you think a brand should handle this? Because you guys have handled crises on different levels, on multiple levels. Kiran, would you want to go first on that?
Right. So to my mind, I think the rules of crisis in the old traditional way of doing PR and social haven't really changed much. It's the collapsing of the time. So, things like, be quick, be transparent, be authentic, less is more, be humane, index on humane answers, not data, be quick to own up, is very important. I think when it comes to traditional PR, you can still hide behind, say, a larger, you can hide behind your spokespeople not being on the front line till it becomes necessary. But I guess in the social sphere, I think if you have a social CEO, the onus will come onto his shoulders squarely. But it is both a boon and a bane. I think it's a boon because by virtue of having built that credibility, I think that's the time to maximize it. So if you've built your credibility around authenticity and transparency, I think when you put out statements, the chances of you being believed will be very, very high because you've already built that trust. So I think rules of crisis pretty much remain the same. I think what the pandemic has actually done is, I think brands realize that they need to be super prepared to address war times. I'm not so sure all brands undergo undertake the exercise of the discipline of really having very solid, quick to activate plans. But I think the pandemic has brought that very close to home, and having a ready to use guide is very important. Again, in a regular crisis, you will have chains of command. Social should also be the same. But there has to be a clampdown as to who responds, who should respond, things like that. I think it's the same. The only thing is that if you had the luxury of 24 hours to respond, right now you have 24 minutes. So without prep and without pre-prep, it's going to be very difficult to manage it carefully. And again, I think in terms of what kind of statements you put out, to my mind, less is more. The more you put out, the ability for anyone to pick and choose what they think they want to talk about. And given the fact that, what I believe right now is that given that every person is like a journalist, it's not so much about communicating to a certain number of people, but it's trying to influence that person to tell your story. And those people are millions of people out there, who can tweet out or, sort of put out anything they want to. So yes, I think a crisis today can be detrimental to brands and they don't have the time. So pre-prep is very important.
No, I agree with you. I think they say trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. The fact of the matter is we're living in that day and age where every person is a citizen journalist. And just to give you an example, on social media these days, especially for consumer love brands like ours, There is a 24/7 chatter happening, and as brands and Sujit also mentioned, social listening plays a very, very critical role. I mean, we are awake 24 hours looking at any piece of content which could be sensitive going forward. And there's also, like you rightly said, less should be the strategy going forward, because of every person putting up something or other on social media doesn't mean you need to reply to that person, right? Because that maybe at times it could also lead to fuel to fire. However, having said that, you need to make sure that you have scenarios mapped. You need to make sure you have documents in place in case there is a crisis which maybe gets blown up, because it doesn't take so much time today to get a trending happening on Twitter. One brand putting up insensitive information, it trends for good reasons and bad reasons. So I think you need to have a team who are well equipped to be in place. At PepsiCo India, for instance, we look at crisis from end to end. We have a social media agency who are fully equipped to tell us on every post which is going out there, and we take a quick call. Like you said, it is agility over perfection on how we need to respond to that. Also one thing we all, communicators and marketers need to keep one thing in mind is that we're living in a time where things become sensitive overnight, right? Like, for instance, when COVID hit last year, we were in the midst of launching a big brand campaigns for all our major brands, whether it was Pepsi or Lay's or Kurkure, big campaigns happening. It was main summertime, and suddenly there was insensitivity because people were unfortunately falling sick. There was complete lockdown across the country, and as a result, the brands had to pivot very fast. All the communication campaigns had to be changed very fast, and the communication had to be stopped. So imagine you're talking about a very simple ad of going around with friends and enjoying Lay's, and then tomorrow there is a news which says that, hey, there's going to be lockdown, don't step outside your house. So people actually wrote that this is very insensitive, right? And that could blow up into a crisis which it's very difficult to predict. So I think in these days, you need to always lie low, keep an eye on what's happening around you, make sure there are teams in place, make sure you have a social listening which is happening, keeping a pulse on it, and make sure as brand, whatever narrative you're sending out, and as communication experts, we do that. We keep telling the brands and make sure you have you show empathy in your communication. You have purpose-driven narrative attached to whatever you're saying, especially in these times where human sentiments are at all-time low. So I think those are key things you need to keep in mind to avoid crisis. Having said that, the other rules still remain. Other rules of crisis we have to follow for products, for reputation. But in the new normal, these are the new crises we need to watch out for and need to be equipped with.
Absolutely. So I'd love to hear from the other panelists.
Add a few points to that. I think a few points that come to my mind beyond what my other colleagues have spoken about. I think there are 3 points. One is basically internal preparedness. I think a need for a culture of risk, escalation, in incident escalation. I mean, unless employees know what is kind of vulnerable, what are the aspects which make their organization vulnerable, it's absolutely important to do those workshops within, and we do that very frequently in terms of letting people know what are the kind of vulnerabilities that we have and when do they need to escalate. Most often an incident becomes a crisis because it's not escalated to the right people for response. So I think that internal culture is absolutely necessary. Second most important thing is an awareness for employees to know and take the responsibility that in today's times, even what they say on their handles is detrimental for a brand. See, for example, an employee who tweets about something which could be polarized or which could bring his views in the crossfire of political parties. And if on his Twitter handle it's written he works for an X organization, you see the magic in the next 5 minutes, how the trolls start trolling the organization, stop buying the products, ban this organization. I think that vulnerability needs to be explained to the employees at every level. It's not only the CEO who's the spokesperson today. Today, it's almost everybody in the organization who can create a crisis. And the third and the most important thing is listening in terms of having the ability to listen what's happening, capture those narratives, and have pre-prepared statements or plans in place, as Amit said, so that your response time is absolutely fast. I think that time really matters. Someone just said, and I love that statement, 24 hours and now we have 24 minutes. I think it's absolutely amazing. I mean, within that 24 minutes, if you really don't respond to that particular incident, it can just go into Google and you get immortalized because it stays there. Nobody can remove it later. So I think these are the 3 points just to add to the rest of the things which my colleagues spoke about.
Fair enough. So I'd like to hear from the other panelists as well, one protocol that they would like to institute within their teams to make sure that PR and digital work more cohesively to avoid a crisis or to battle a crisis. Vinita?
Sorry, your voice broke a little, Tarunjit. Could you repeat?
What would be that one protocol that you would institute in your teams to make sure that your digital and PR wings work more cohesively during a crisis?
Right.
Or a crisis?
Okay. So, of course, I mean, social definitely makes the world much faster. It also makes the world much more cruel, because behind a screen, anybody can say anything. And you are left to respond to it. But at the same time, I think social gives the brand the power to really speak directly to your stakeholders externally. And every crisis outside presents an opportunity to outdo yourself as a brand and build further trust, like everybody mentioned, stand on your values. A lot also depends on what you are as a company. If you're a startup, it's much easier to take risks, to many times take the bull by the horn and actually, take some very interesting steps to manage a crisis. In a larger organization, which is much more risk averse, you'll be more protective of your brand. You'll be discussing more. And, before you actually discuss with your digital team, what should be your strategy. I mean, take the case of Zomato. I mean, how they responded to their recent crisis and how the organization came together to really, and it was not just the communication writing a set of lines, but how they were able to bring different parts of the organization. It really is reflective of who Zomato is and how they want their customer experience to be. Similarly, when I was working with Hike as a startup, and we had a huge crisis on our hand, and we worked very closely with our marketing and digital team. And it was a digital crisis because our ads were being blocked. And Hike was a startup, and we wanted our ads to go out to the end consumer. And I know we actually took the bull by the horns, and what we did as a strategy, I'm not going to divulge the details here, but it actually got a lot of support from the industry for us, for our brand. So depending on who you are as a company, what is your risk appetite, where you are, the social team and comms coming together gives you a great opportunity to outdo yourself in a crisis and build your brand.
We would love to know the strategy though.
Yes, I will call you after this, Tarun.
I think a social media policy is very critical for every organization. And apart from social media policy, the employees should be also aware of the do's and don'ts, especially when they are in their own social media handles. That is very critical. And like everyone said, Amit, Kiran, and Sujit, real-time monitoring and analysis of news is very much required. And giving too many information in social media handles can actually backfire. And in recent times, I've seen a lot of print media have actually done stories basis the social media post of different companies taking it as a statement. So I mean, it's a two-edged sword. So you have to engage, but you have to engage in a very cautious manner.
Absolutely. Subhi, would you want to weigh in on that?
Sure, Tarunjit. I think a lot has been spoken, but not everyone has said it. So just adding my voice. I think we started with the conversation how interns is a great strategy. What we really mean is that look at a demographic who are digital natives who speak the language. When you're looking at a crisis, it means that things have already gone down south. It is very, very critical that just as you have fire safety simulations and drills, you are doing crisis simulations so that it's not for the first time, now let us scramble for responses. A holding statement, very, very critical. A dark website that already exists. And third, very, very critical, Bhaskar mentioned, not just a social media policy, but a policy that speaks to each of your employees as ambassadors. Also very critical, you know exactly who's in command. There can be only one voice, there can be only one leader. You can't have multiple departments take responsibility and say, okay, I'll also do something and you'll also do something. Doesn't work. Just as you do an ethics and integrity training almost every day, just as you have sensitized employees on financial integrity, on accountability as well as social media ethics and integrity, equally important, because you don't just speak as employees. You may not mention your organizational affiliation on, let's say, a Twitter or Facebook, but it's right there on LinkedIn. So it doesn't take too long for you to figure out. I love what Amit said, that, you know, if you're looking at every drop and then you have a huge leaking bucket, this is a serious risk. So when it comes to social, what I'm increasingly seeing is brands are saying less is more. They're erring on the side of caution. I don't think we have to come at it from the point of view of fear. Just as you engage with stakeholders, just as you engage with media and journalists responsibly, I believe it's important that we see this now as an organic way of life. It is, no matter whether it's a crisis, it's exactly how you would deal with everybody in a situation, respecting the fact that the speed and virality is going to be much faster. So Burger King was a recent example. I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. You did a tweet, you left it hanging, and your intent was you'll come back and you'll finish the campaign. But you may not have a second bite at the apple. That is very, very important for us to realize, that think campaigns through, think conversations through, and think language through. But it has to be equally organic. It can't be a forced conversation. And, Kiran already spoke to the point that crisis hasn't changed. It's just the tool and the speed with which you need to respond, and very, very cohesively. So this is exactly the point that we started with, that comms, PR, digital, don't see them as separate buckets, because it's a tool and it's a medium. You will use it, product will use it to get more users and sell more products, but this is equally intrinsic to the very function that we lead. Thank you.
Absolutely. But with the, you rightly mentioned that the landscape is changing. The medium might change, but the basic essence of a crisis always remains the same. So today, in the war room, who would you want with you, right? What is the skill set that you will look for within an individual or a professional who you would want with you in the war room today? Yeah. Kiran and Amit, I'd like you to respond to that first.
Tarun, I'd also love to come in on this. It's a favorite point of contention whenever you're ready. Thank you. I'll wait my turn.
So I'll let Amit go first.
Okay, if I have given an option, so that's a tricky one. But first of all, I think.
Okay, let me narrow that down. You have to pick 5 people. Okay, who would that be in the war room?
Okay, I will tell you from the PepsiCo scenario. It's been 2 years in the company, and I've been part of some of these war rooms. I think first and foremost, the legal team, very, very important, very critical. And many a times we have to take permissions from legal, so they have to be there in the war room. My PPGA team, and Bhaskar will definitely agree to it, public policy teams, considering we have a very strong interface with the government and social media. These days we need to be very, very careful what we put out there. So government plays a very key role. So that is important. My brand lead. So if it is pertaining to your brand, then I need to have a brand comm person inside, the brand manager sitting with me, discussing what's happening. I would also love to have someone from my media team, which does the entire sort of media buying. Believe me, it really helps to have them on your side, because eventually they know the person to call in Google, in Twitter, in Facebook, because they do sort of dealings with them. So that's 4. And 5th, maybe I'll take a chance. Maybe I'll get someone from my PR consultants. They are my partners after all. To see them, and so that they can help us. Of course, they must have also seen similar campaigns. So always great to have them in the room. So these would be the 5 quick pick for me to win the room.
Okay, chance is very one
person last.
It was not in order though, by the way.
It almost seemed like an afterthought, but Kiran, you're next.
Right. So, okay. So, I would say, of course, the PR person. Definitely. I think legal, HR, and spokesperson designate would be the other three that I would pick. And I'm assuming the comms person would, I guess, among, I'm thinking more of a corporate crisis in this case, but of course, it was more product or brand, product related, then that product person as well. But yes, so in that, whatever, but PR would be definitely first in the room.
Thank you. I love that list. Subi?
Thanks, Tarun. I think, no, I'm not going to do the list because Amit and Kiran have covered the functions. I just want to bring in an additional perspective. Normally, you'd go with your identified spokesperson, depending upon the severity of the crisis. I would also want to see if we could create a buffer for your spokesperson. Somebody with a very high credibility needs to be in the room, somebody who's very savvy with the media. And I'm speaking who's a digital native, equally critical. If you're doing video, very, very important that there's enough and more familiarity. If you're putting out statements, then it's still a tighter, more controlled form. But I do want to make sure that if I'm looking at, extreme amounts of impact or extreme amounts of outcome, which has long-term repercussions for the brand, then I'd love to see a product or a functional head take lead. And that is a strategic call that you make depending on, who you want to put out, and always have a buffer for your safety, because this, it's extreme situations, right? You don't want to attribute things which will stick forever, because this crisis may pass, but what you put out will stay on forever. So that's just the only point of difference. I completely agree with the broader list, and we've had Bhaskar, we've had Samir, who's not on the call today, from front pages of extremely important newspapers to crisis which is consumer driven, or maybe even an outcome of a completely unrelated court judgment, but the repercussions are huge, especially if you're an association or if you have multiple members, if you have varied interests at play. You want to be super careful as to what you're putting out, how much you're putting out, and the assessment of the crisis. So I'll stop here at that, but that would be the only point of difference that I would have here. Thank you.
Absolutely, completely agree with it. And I also feel it's very important that your PR professional or PR agency is working with you, even though it might be an external partner, needs to be in that war room, because after the decisions are done, you cannot just ask a PR agency to say, "Acha abhi jao, implement it." It doesn't work that way, right? They have to be in the war room to be able to help you make those decisions, because they get you a third party perspective. Minita, would you want to weigh in on that?
The big piece here is, and somebody briefly alluded to it, bad news must always travel first. I think that's the golden rule. Don't sit and wait. Don't sit and wait. If you see this developing, make sure that your, other than the ICE number and your family first in case of an emergency, I think your PR account director has to be your speed dial. That's very, very critical.
Like I always tell my clients, your legal head, your HR head, your doctor, and your PR professional, your PR person who's working with you, need to be in the loop of everything happening in your life and your company. Yeah, Amit, you wanted to add something to that?
I just think that, just to my point, that these meetings are largely led by the comms team. Sometimes I'll say there is sensitivity. So I will be very honest that it's not every time you'll get a PR person in the room. There's a CEO also sitting in the room, and they would want you to first get a exact first-hand sense of it and then get the PR teams, because there are sensitivities, to be very honest. But having said that, many a times the first person on the dial is the PR team, because they can quickly do the sense of what is happening and to what extent you need to react to that particular crisis.
Fair enough.
In fact, I'll like to add one more thing. In certain crisis situations in our company, we actually created two different war rooms. One was for the management team, one was for the comms team. And when I say comms team, I don't believe that the comms team or the agency teams are different entities. It's basically the same team, because at the end of the day, both of them have to work hand to hand for the same brand.
Absolutely.
So in general, depending on the crisis situation, as Amit or Kiran and Subi has said, the policy guy is very much important. The regulatory guy is very much important. Legal guy is one of the most important guy. Sometimes, depending on the nature of the crisis, even the HR guy is important. So this is a combination of everything. But again, when I said that the comms team has to be there, it's a combination of both. It cannot be two separate teams.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the HR guy is equally important because HR person rather is equally important because you need to be able to manage the internal communication as well as the external one.
Yes, like, especially for our company, we are like 3,000 people and our corporate office has got only 300 people. Rest 27 people are scattered in various site offices. Now, unless HR is part of that war room, they will not be able to understand what exactly they have to communicate to all the employees. So HR, I think, is also an integral part of the war room.
Let me move on to the next question. I would want to know from each one of you, a specific individual crisis, social media crisis that your team has handled. Minita, let's start with you, and maybe you can share some of the earlier strategies that you mentioned.
Okay. So I won't go into the details of it, but I think it was my day one at Hike, and I was just doing my signing of forms when I got a call from Kavin, and he said, "I want to meet you right away." And I met him, and apparently our ads were being blocked by a big platform, a large platform. And of course, we had to figure out a way, and Kavin and I decided, let's go after them. How do you go after them? How do you fix this? And I think my first meeting was with the marketing function because they were the custodians of the ad to try and understand what is the damage that is happening if we are not advertising there on that platform. What is the slowdown in our growth? Why are the ads being blocked? And more importantly, also, sort of investigate what are the ads? Are they fulfilling the criteria of the platform? Are there any red flags in the ad? Writing to the platform to try and understand their point of view. We didn't get any satisfactory answer. The marketing team said we'll figure out a way around it. But for us, it was a crisis from my perspective and the founder's perspective to say that why are we being blocked? And from a strategy perspective, I think what we did was we got our PR machinery moving. And I would agree with Kiran here that we absolutely need to get the PR agency, debate, discuss. And we've had some really good debates with my PR agency on agencies on multiple crises and some really good, there's gold that comes out of it. So we discussed that, and we figured out a solution, which was a combination of media tactics, including leaks, including getting some journalists on our side, including meeting with NASSCOM. And like I said, by the end of it, within say about 25, 30 days, even though initially we didn't get any positive response, our ads were unblocked. We had a good working relationship. Industry event, one of the biggest industry events that Kavin and we were participating in, got the entire set of audience actually talking about how, we had the sentiment on our side. So that was the scenario where I wouldn't call it a crisis that was external. It was an internal crisis because our growth was being hampered there. And we really needed to manage that and get the growth numbers back. So that's what we did, Tarunjit. The call is not required now.
If I'm not wrong, I remember reading about it. Very interesting, very good to kind of understand how that happened. Sujit and Amit, I would want you to weigh in on that because you would be doing a lot of consumer-facing crises at this point.
Yeah. So, one thing is that it's been 2 years, like I said, with PepsiCo, there haven't been too many crises per se. So when I was talking to my boss, he said not having a crisis is also a pat on the back for the comms team because you are making sure it doesn't happen in the first place. Because to make sure the crisis doesn't happen, you don't have a recipe for that. All you need to do is make sure you are ahead of the curve, do the social listening nicely, and preempt things which could be damaging. For instance, we've been many times told the brands to stop their ads because we feel the timing is not correct. But like you said, on consumer side, yes, there have been instances. We have avoided those crises to become mega crises. One of our brand is one of the India's most loved brand is Kurkure, and it's a homegrown brand for us. And what happens is that there are a lot of imitations of Kurkure across the country. A lot of local brands, which Kurkure has become a category like Maggie's for noodles, right? So, so a lot of imitating brands happen, and smaller parts of the country, those are being sold, which also has toys in it. So toys is something which attracts children. So there've been one or two instances where there were actual deaths, where children were consuming the products. They swallowed the toy and there were actual death. We came to know very late. And of course, when somebody asked what happened, they said the person consumed Kurkure. They never know the brand because they thought it's Kurkure only, right? Extruded. And that got picked up by local media immediately. It was like 8 in the evening, and immediately, of course, like I said, we have an entire team who sits there and looks at things, and it was pulled up. We spoke. The consultants, PR consultants, made up calls to see senior journalists and made sure that there was the right information which was sent out to editors, to the local stakeholders, including the local police officers. And I think it was managed pretty well. And this has happened not once, but 2-3 times, and we've been able to manage it pretty well. So I won't get into many other details of other crises, but this is something which we've been working on, keeping a pulse of what's happening on social media, evading such sort of crisis, keeping in handy statements. Less is more is right, but sometimes you need to be also open and talk about things. And we've been doing a pretty touchwood a good job at it. Yeah, so not much so far. So let's hope sure it remains the same.
Kurkure seems to be a brand that has been specifically targeted by a lot of, other competition or maybe individuals. It seems to be a brand that has taken a lot of punching, but it's still standing strong, which says a lot about how the comms team has handled its reputation. Yeah. Sujit, I want to hear.
I want to take 30 seconds. Yeah, sorry. I want to take 30 seconds.
Amit, would you want to complete?
Okay.
No, I'm saying thank you very much for that. The brand has completed 20 years, and I rightly agree with you. It's done a lot for the industry, for India, and it has taken its share of punches, but has stood tall and is performing pretty well. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Vinita.
Yeah, I wanted to just quickly add that, I don't know, maybe just take 20-25 seconds and just add a point. So, I don't know if maybe it's about day one of me joining in a crisis hitting the company, but when I joined Adobe on day one, we had a credit card data leak. We had a customer data leak. But I think what's important is that the way the crisis was handled in a larger brand versus how we handled it in a startup was very different. So I wanted to bring up that point here, that the decision on how you want to manage a crisis is with respect to the brand that you're handling, where it is on its life cycle, what is the objective, and what are we trying to get, and how much risk do you want to take with the brand. So I just wanted to put that out.
Absolutely. You bring an interesting point on startups. Kiran, I would want you to add to that. You have handled a lot of startups and crisis communication along with it.
Right. So,
you share
so while of course I'm not going to take names of any brands being bound by NDA, I'll talk about a very, I think, relevant crisis that I'm sure everyone's sort of come across in the last 1 year, which is of layoffs. Companies were forced to lay off, either because of business exigency or as a normal course of business as well. But given the sensitivity of COVID, it had to be handled very humanely. So, a couple of things and we were faced with some of these crises in the last 1 year. I think one of the things that worked really well was, I think the first is to get to the bottom of the crisis. What is really the issue and what's the truth of the matter? Really get down to the bottom of it. Typically, there's always an incoming query, which, sort of tells you that the crisis is outside your organization and people are aware of it. I think the key was to first buy time. And this is where investing in PR and media relations comes in. It's not like you may be able to stop it, which is highly unlikely, but what you can do is ask for time. And when it, I think, comes to an HR or human crisis, companies want to spend at least 24 hours first making sure that internal communication is handled well. So inside out is what you want to do. So, in that time, we were able to buy that time, in order to respond, putting out a statement that was true, because you want to be true to internal and external audiences. You can't be saying something internally and not carrying that through externally. And I guess the golden rule is reactive only, not proactive. So you put it out to only when asked for it. And I guess there's the key thing about the crisis is also to figure, and in both the cases, I think one of the things that we did decide was a complete ban on social. Nobody could respond to social comments, because I think it's a battle you can't win, because people are hurting and emotions are high. So I think you need to, I think depending on the crisis, you need to have a very specific way of dealing with the medium. And then I think deciding when you will restart communications is also important, because the trick to following that crisis is how do you rebuild the positive so that the negative then gets, sort of lesser in the scheme of things. So yes, I think over here again, the regular rules of crisis applied. And of course, only through written statements, no talking to anyone, because talk can be misconstrued. And then, the person listening to that has the freedom to take things out of context. So yeah. So I think this was a very relevant crisis, I think, and I'm sure that this year as well, I think brands may need to continue to deal with it.
That must have been, a recommendation that you gave your client, which must have gone against the tide, because last year we saw a lot of companies who were doing layoffs use the layoffs as a means to create more PR for themselves, with LinkedIn posts, Twitter posts happening on the specific layoffs, right?
I think, Tarun, the biggest, I think, area of contention was how do you craft that communication? And I think what we pushed through was the humane angle. Oftentimes, and like I mentioned earlier, I think not all layoff was, a consequence of COVID. Some was also a consequence of just business appraisals. But the point is that you cannot use that verbiage when there's a human crisis on. But it's just not going to go down well. So I think bringing that nuance and that sensitivity to the nature of the communication is very important. I think the medium battle is, I think, a lot lesser. I think what you should put in that 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 lines is very important. So yeah, I think that was the biggest area of disagreement, where we sort of, stood our ground and sort of said, and I must say that I think it was very well appreciated. But, post all of that going off smoothly. So there was a high degree of appreciation that we had pushed our way through. But, as is the case with external consultants, you can just lay out the pros and the cons.
Right.
And if you can really push your way only so much. And typically, I think, everybody sees the logic of it. I think, as you give it some time, and it takes a couple of hours to arrive at a solution that works well for everyone. And it really depends how you internalize it, so yeah.
Absolutely. That's wonderful to hear on the appreciation part. Subhi, would you want to share a case study with us?
Sure, Tarunji. So I think it's critical that...
Tarun, this is Subhi or Sujit?
I think Sujit, she met me, but feel free to jump in.
Okay, sorry.
Sure.
No, my network suddenly came and I just heard the last line. So anyway, go on.
Yeah. So what we wanted to really discuss was the issue of tech and infrastructure. And a lot of times, as you get new players in the market, you start expanding. This relates to a fairly large national event where the industry had been reeling from taxes. It had been reeling from understanding and unpacking framework and policies. We then headed the Cellular Operators Association of India, and we were representing multiple industries and brands. The challenge was the three incumbents already had their towers, they had their antennas, and then you had a new player in the market, and you had to expand and build networks. What did tend to happen was the rapidness with which those towers came up, and some ill-informed consumers who thought that maybe here is an opportunity to create new devices which would suddenly make these radiation or emissions compatible with your body, meant you had in one state farmers telling you that the size of their coconuts was growing smaller because of emissions from the towers. On the other hand, you had people who believed that they might cause cancer, which was a fairly serious issue. On the third end, you had people who completely disallowed. So you had RWAs, you had armies of different ministries who then started looking at this problem from the lens of consumer perception rather than scientific analysis and data. Very, very serious issue. So on one hand, the government tells
I can so relate to the crisis situation.
I know, Bhaskar. Feel free to jump in. So here is where, on one hand, you have the onus as the industry to say no call drops, and yet you have permissions, no permissions for putting out towers. So how do you really solve for this? And you'd be amazed to know, Tarun, that the industry had been spending crores and crores of rupees just to do advocacy. They'd used ATL, they had used BTL, and despite the fact that you were reeling from a lot of onerous burdens of taxes or regulatory frameworks, the ask was, please go look at a multimedia, mass media campaign, which meant more money. And this is where, when I came in and I spoke about who do you identify as your spokesperson. So third-party advocacy, especially social media, very, very critical to have friends and allies and identify the right set of people who will do your storytelling. So if the industry went in and said, my towers are completely safe, what do you think would happen? So therefore, you had to make a combined pitch, even if there are varied points of interest or there's conflict of interest. You learned to create very early on a common minimum program. You did advocacy and you recruited the government to say that India has 1/10 of the global limits of emission. The towers emit less than your microwave or the bulb in your room. So from using infographics to recruiting the government to be your spokespersons and saying this is about national infrastructure. It's a record of sorts that within about 6 months, working very closely with friends in the media, and making sure that you were able to advocate not just with the beat reporters, but also the editors who first had to be, so you're looking at a jargon riddled, acronym filled, very technical detail, which has to be simplified, and then turn this around into a consumer campaign. So using a set of spokesperson, using government doctors, using longitudinal studies, using researches, and then going to language press. Wherever you would see features, you would see entertainment, you had to be there. So looking to the source, making sure you expanded, making sure you looked at quantity, and making sure that you had a variety of voices speaking for you. So that's crisis 101 for you. And this could happen anytime. This could be triggered by something completely unrelated to your business. But I'm happy to share that we actually got the first law in the country. So it's now a national law. There's an ROW Gazette notification that makes it mandatory for people to give you access to towers. It's a national resource now. So that turned out well. Thank you.
That's fascinating. So we have last 10 minutes left for the session. I'm going to direct one question.
Adding to what Subi said, this is one crisis situation where you understood that, the language of communication has to be very simple so that a layman can actually understand. Because the end customer are just normal, city, and they don't understand the jargons. So a lot of learnings, and I've been happy to get associated with this particular case study and this crisis situation.
Absolutely. So we are running out of time. We have last 10 minutes. I'm going to
some of the crisis.
I'm going to address one question to each one of you, right? I would like each one of you to give me a crisp answer to it. Bhaskar, the first one is for you. Would the world of PR have been better without social media, or is it a welcome development?
With situation like now, social media has to be part of all communication. I mean, you can always choose to ignore it, but can't help it. Like I know there was a time when people used to pitch stories, and the story used to come. The next is print newspaper, and hopefully the same date is to get into the online. But nowadays,
Right.
whenever you pitch a story, it first comes in the Twitter handle of the publication house, then followed by the journalist, and then in online, and the next day the print comes. So things have changed, and it has to be part of the communication world. One has to admit it.
Absolutely. Sujit, the next one is for you. Is the PR industry ready to take on, PR in the times of social media today? If the world turned completely digital today, right? If there was a switch that would just make everything digital right now, how much of the PR industry would survive? Sujit?
I would say 100% of it will survive. So digital for me is a mode. I mean, PR is a philosophy. PR, public relations and reputation management is a need. Digital is just the mode of communication. So I see social media and digital as enablers for my PR activations and activities. I mean, my larger intent, the reason for a function to survive in an organization is about reputation. It's about stakeholder engagement, and the modes of communications could be any. And digital and social media are different modes of communication. Just brings my stakeholders, my consumers, my investors, my blah 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 blah, all the stakeholders much more closer to me. They're enablers. So I would say use it in that sense rather than looking at it as a competition, whether this or that. So I'm a firm believer that it's a great enabler.
I love that answer. PR is a philosophy. Next question is for Amit. In terms replacing agency professional and agency fees, that seems to be a common thread, and a lot of responses that I got indicated that to me. Is that the position PR occupies in the brand building ecosystem that you have created around the brand that you work with? Can they be replaced easily?
Sorry,
Easily be
you need to
replaced by
repeat the question,
interns?
Saranjeet. Your voice is breaking quite a lot. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Interns replacing agency professionals and agency fees, right? Is that the position that PR occupies in your brand building ecosystem? Can they be so easily replaced by interns? Because that's a common thread that I found in a lot of the answers today.
No, not at all. I think there is a quite a distinct place of, I don't even call them agencies, I call them partners and consultants. So there's a distinct place for them. There's an important role for them, and we look at them as our partners. So I don't see in now, even in future, they being replaced by interns, or look at models of, changing industry, agency fees, etc. I think they're going to play an intrinsic role, and in fact, it's going to be opposite. Going forward, their importance is going to increase, considering the polarized world we are living at, considering the crisis communication we are all talking about, considering we are in social world where everything becomes news when you put it up there. So I think it's going to be opposite, and it's going to be more important. And I think, and for us PR professionals, it's going to be a challenging time, but we should all be thriving this time, because this is the time to tell us the salt, what we are made of, and tell the organization that being on the table. So I believe on the contrary.
Wonderful. Lovely to hear that. Minita, the next question is for you. PR measurement. I think we can talk about it till the cows come, but and I most recently have seen a lot of people asking for AVE again. What do you and how do you recommend that we measure ROI for PR in social media?
Of course, there is output, there is outcome, there is impact, and like you said, it is difficult to figure out, and connect. While output is very easy to measure, outcome might be slightly more difficult, impact. But remember that communication and PR is a corporate function, and we are looking at the entire organization. The lens is not just on marketing, but on multiple aspects of the organization. And therefore, how as an organization we are performing is a good metric. And looking at various metrics of the functions also gives an indication to how communication is performing. I think what I also want to say, and on your question on whether we need PR in the time of social, of course, like I said, you're looking at the 360-degree view of the organization along with the corporate. I think comms is also about, while there is a function which loves to amplify, social loves to amplify what communication does. Of course, it helps you amplify, but it also is the function that tells you what not to say or how not to say it. And very few functions in the organization can do that. And that also gives you a measure of how you're doing vis-a-vis your crisis or otherwise. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I love that answer. Kiran, the next one is for you. One best practice for integrating social media with PR.
I guess common meetings to start with. I think that's
Absolutely
good best practice. But yes, I think bringing in PR folks, when campaigns are being designed and developed, versus I think one of the panelists did talk about like having us in the room and not sort of saying, here, take and run with it. I think, just in terms of ownership, I think it'll be very different in terms of understanding and internalizing the campaign will be, I think that'd be a great place to start. I know it's easier said than done. There, lots of different people to bring on the same page. But I think that'd be a great place to start. Then one more point about, the social, relevance being today, I truly believe that, it's an evolution and 10 years later, there'll be something else. There'll be like some people media or something that we'll be talking about in social. The question will be, is print dead? Print ain't dead. We've been talking about this for the last 20 years. Another 10 years, it'll evolve into something else. And the whole thing will be the same again. So I think it's going to be a case of plus, and more pluses. So yeah, I think this conversation 10 years down the line, we'll be discussing a different medium.
Absolutely. Sujit, my last question of the day for you. Define public relations for us in the age of social media. I believe the definition of PR has undergone a huge change over the last 10 years and specifically in the last 12 months. I would love for you to kind of encapsulate it and define it for us. Sujit? Sujit, are you there?
In sporadic bits. Hello?
All right.
Hello?
So last question of the day. Hello?
We can hear you, Sujit. Go ahead.
We can hear you, Sujit.
Tarun, can you repeat the question, please? It's just coming in bits and pieces there. I'm not able to hear it very clearly.
Define public relations for us in the age of social media.
Public relations in the age of social media. I think the definition doesn't change. Public relation is public relation. Again, let me come back to this point which I made. Social media is just an enabler. Public relation, the tenets, the basis, and all those aspects of public relation, reputation management don't change. Just use social media and digital as enablers. That's my firm and strong belief. So I don't think the definition needs to change. I think from Ramayanas and Mahabharatas, abhi tak definition hui hai.
Absolutely.
I just want to briefly comment on this one. This is a Twitter intervention. I think one of the things that you do want to take away is the ability to tell stories. And in any story, it's the plot. If you look at any Bollywood movie, mostly it's stayed the same. Girl meets boy, and it's the treatment of it. So whether we're looking to sell stories, ideas, people, start revolutions, start movements, what consumers are really looking for is the genuineness of voice. Will you stay true to building a brand with purpose? Will you be my brand? Or today are you saying this and tomorrow you're someone completely different and I don't know you, right? And then you say it's not your fault, it's mine. So don't do that to people. Just this bit on PR, and everyone's really said this beautifully. They've captured this well. But adding that bit on the ability to connect, the ability to tell stories, why a Zakir Khan is relevant today, why an Abhimanyu and an Upamanyu, why are these stand-up comics now beacons of hope for a community that you want to look to engage? So a lot of humor, a lot of wit, a lot of charm, but also staying true to purpose. And that's really what I would want to take away from here. Thank you.
Very well put, Subhi.
For this discussion.
Want to
Thank
add
you.
to that?
No, I totally agree. So I think it's very important in today's time that we need to be authentic. We need to be storytellers. Social media is a tool. It is enabler. And be true to your brand purpose and be authentic in whatever you tell your audiences, especially consumers, because that's what they're looking at from. And PR needs to play a very critical role, a catalytic role in enabling that and ensuring that we walk the talk. So I think very nicely put, Shruti and Sujit, and I totally agree with that.
Wonderful. So on that note, I'll bring this panel to a close. Thank you everyone for joining us for this insightful conversation. Before we wrap up, I would like to give a shout out to our industry partners, PRCAI and our knowledge partner, PRPOI, who have partnered with the AdGully for this series. Thank you for giving us the opportunity and a chance to have this discussion on this platform. Over to you, Vijaya.
Tarun, would you want to answer some of the questions that's been put up?
Do we have time?
Do you have time?
All right. All right. So this is a question that any of the panelists can take up. What do you enjoy most about the PR industry? It's a fun question.
I think the most I enjoy is that every day is a new day. When I get up, there is no monotony, and it's something new every day. So yeah, new challenges. New
Okay, that's an interesting one. How do you manage traditional PR push on print during these tough times, since digital PR would not suffice to reach the bigger numbers?
Tarun, I want
somebody want to
so one, make sure that you connect, you listen, you remain sensitive, and you engage. Make sure that you're following the journalists online. And if there's been a personal tragedy, don't start pushing stories at them. And make sure that you've read what they're writing on. Don't get someone who's not connected or is not aware to suddenly pick up the phone and say, hey, I have a release. Would you carry it? So look at industry stories, look at editorial calendars. On the question before this, I think it's sheer joy that you're telling stories and someone's willing to listen to you. You have the ability to craft narratives, you have the ability to shape discourse, and you have the ability to solve for really big problems, especially when you're looking at COVID, when you're looking at digital, where access is through larger communication. It is through looking at even crisis as an opportunity, right? How do you step up? How do you innovate? So if all of us are creative and agile and nimble, I couldn't have asked for more, that here is a set of challenges and this is why you came in the profession. So it's deeply inspiring. You just have to be passionate about what you do. Otherwise, you're in the wrong profession.
Absolutely. There's another interesting one. Do you think that social media is where the communication is happening now, with strategy and focus on interaction and a lot of focus on it? And will this then surpass or demolish the traditional media for PR communication? Sujit, would you want to take that?
It can never demolish. I don't know why you're getting so extreme thoughts, and people are asking these kind of questions in terms of social media. Again, third time repeating, it's an enabler. It's only enhance the reach of the basic need of an organization to communicate well with its stakeholders. So I don't think it can kill. I mean, print is going to be there for all the time. Regional media is coming up. It'll just turn into more micro. Likewise, in the social space, from larger influencers, it's turning towards more nano and micro influencers. People are believing in their areas. So, that focused communication modes and means and techniques will change, but the basis is going to be still going to be the same. I mean, we've been listening since the time, last 20 years, and on an average, everyone on this panel has been in the industry for 20, 25 years, or maybe 15 years at least plus. From the first day, we were having these conversations, conundrums around measurement. Will PR survive? Will print survive? Nothing is going to happen. I mean, it's up to us to make the best out of the latest tools, which are tomorrow. AI is going to come. Tomorrow will the next narrative. I was on a global conference and people asking, because of AI, would communication jobs be lost? I think we need to look at it from an angle of enablers in terms of making our lives easier. Our productivity and efficacy is much more higher, and the outputs that we give to the organization and for our brands much more higher. So I think that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
In fact, adding to that, traditional media will always have its relevance. And brand to brand, it actually depends on different brands, especially if it's a government entity, they will always choose to, choose the traditional way to reach out to their people.
Yeah.
And I would want to add
For a
what
consumer
you
brand,
mentioned
I
quickly.
would look at, I would love to have a traditional platform for myself in terms of FMCG. So it's not only government.
Yeah, I agree.
And given Sujit is, third time saying the same thing, I wanted to just add that, the emergence of digital has only added to the number of media.
Right.
And and you're only looking at media. There are many aspects to communication. There's, in many organizations, they may be separate, but you're doing analyst relations, there's influencers, there is crisis, and digital has only increased the number of media channels out there for you to use. So, it's only increased the work.
Absolutely.
And just add, sorry, the joy of getting a story in print media is, to be me, it's way more than it comes to digital, to be very honest. So I think that will still exist. Traditional will have its place. We had those doubts last year also when newspapers were shut down and you were all talking about, hey, what's going to happen? And it's there. I mean, I have 5 newspapers which comes to my house. So my point is, it's going to be there, and yes, they will learn the lesson. They will pivot. They will become more interesting. That will for sure happen. Millennials are skewing towards digital media. There's no two ways about it. But that doesn't mean that at the trade-off of tradition. So I think they will coexist.
Understand. I'm sure each one of them has its place, and both of them will continue to survive and thrive. Last question of the day. One skill that you would want industry professionals to pick up this year to be able to survive or thrive in, PR that is mixed and merged with social media. Amit, we'll start with you.
I think one skill which they need to keep improving which is something which is going to be very, very critical going forward, is become experts in storytelling, right? I still feel that it's still not a trait which comes naturally to many people, and neither they're investing too much time. That is something they need to keep working on and improving on it, how to become even better storytellers, especially in times to come, where what the key things would be empathy and purpose.
Understood. Manita, one skill.
One skill that I would want to have, is that the question?
You would want PR professionals to pick up, to be able to
pick up.
Yeah.
Okay, let me think about it. Let me come back in a minute.
Okay, Subi, you are next.
Tarun, I think it's important that we look at teaching and also sharing and driving more conversations in PR professionals towards decoding digital trust. That itself is one of the most critical asks today, whether it's for your brand. And that is a function of diligence. It's a function of the ability to draw larger connections in an interconnected world. It's the ability to be agile. It's the ability to also understand what is it that you're trying to achieve. So the fact that we think that we know it all, and the fact that we're good at one thing, everybody on the panel was consistent in saying this is evolving. From the time we started the panel, about 15,000 new users have come online. Who are they? How do they think? Local, vernacular, language, and then looking at even trust in the media. No one's sort of touched that to a greater extent today, but whether it's print or whether it's digital or if it's online, if that's not doing their job well, or if there are newspapers which are printed and lying in godowns today because of COVID, the traditional metrics of NRS and reader surveys, it's a lot to do with how are you evolving? Are you agile? Do you just have information or do you have knowledge? So that for me is not just for people who we hire, but also constantly an ask that I make of myself.
Absolutely. Bhaskar?
I think adapting to the new environment and the new normal is something which every profession has to learn. And second will be clarity of thought.
So agree. Kiran?
I would say quality of storytelling in context. I think the ability to put it all together and connect the dots and then tell your stories, because only then will they make sense. So one is the quality and one is to make that storytelling very relevant. You need to learn to connect the dots, and that can only come by being informed and reading and I'm not saying sort of read like books necessarily, given the paucity of time and the lack of attention each one of us has today, but just being really aware of what's going on, aware of issues. I think that's going to be very, very critical, because that stories we are telling can't be in a vacuum. So yes.
Right. Manita, would you want to address that now?
Yeah. So I think from a skills perspective, I want to make 2 points. One, of course, we need to get in good talent in PR, and that will happen when due credit is given to the space of PR that we are talking about. So get good talent in who can execute. So you may create blue ocean strategies, but you've got to make execution a part of your strategy. And for that, you need the right people, and you need the right skills and the right talent to come in. And for that, you need to give enough importance to PR to get them the right budget and get the right people in. So that's my take. It's not specifically skill sets, but that's what I feel.
Very true. And Amit, I agree. Data and insights are also going to be very, very essential. Sujit, would you want to address that? I'm not sure whether we have Sujit with us.
I think he's there.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wait for 5 seconds before handing it over to Vijaya.
Tarun, why don't you tell me? Why don't you tell me your point of view? You asked everyone. What do you think?
So, while everybody mentions storytelling is a great skill, I think if you don't enjoy storytelling, one, you should not be in the profession. Yeah, because PR is about creating those intriguing, interesting stories that will communicate your message out there, which will be relevant to an audience. One of the skills that I want people in the industry to continue to have is be teachable. Be teachable, because the industry will change. As all our panelists have said, it's evolving, it will change. Today it is something, tomorrow there's going to be something else, right? If you want to finish familiar, that's fine, right? You probably kind of shut shop in a couple of months and move out, right? But if you really want to thrive, be teachable. You can learn from anyone, any age group, whether it's an intern, whether it's a CEO, and different levels, different designations, different verticals. It's up to you to be that sponge, to be able to absorb that knowledge. And like Kiran said, you have to be able to make sense of it. Yeah. But if you're not teachable to start with, it becomes very difficult for everybody else to communicate that message to you. So that would be my big take on what you need to do for this year.
I guess